first WFA chat session, which is a coffee break discussion. I'm Ollie Theocaris, Head of Content for WFA. So I hope you all have your coffees at the ready. I hope you have your phones on silent and you're ready to reflect on yourselves for the next 20 minutes or so. So this is an informal session and we are live. So we would love you to interact throughout. So what you should be able to see to the right of your screen is a chat box. So if you can't see this, it might be minimized to just have a little bit of a hunt for it. But we want your thoughts and comments as we're having the discussion, and I'll be asking you to input at different times. So do be prepared to put your coffee down, type some thoughts and ideas in this section. There is a 30-second delay, so if we do take a bit longer to respond to your comment, then that's why. And also, we are recording this session. So today, I have our guest speaker, Jane Craigie, with us to discuss some issues over a coffee. So Jane is one of our WFA ambassadors and has supported our work from the very start at WFA. So we're delighted to get your thoughts today, Jane. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. I'm really glad to be here.
Good, good. So in the spirit of International Women's Day, actually, it would be really nice if you could start by just telling everyone watching a little bit about yourself and some of the projects that you're involved in.
Sure, Ollie. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks ever so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to be here, as I said before, because I think WFA, the first event for those of you that went, I thought was amazing. It was so empowering and disarming, and there was so much honesty. So my background is I am not from an agricultural background, but I now work in agricultural communications. So I run a business specializing in marketing and communications, focused on rural and agri-food. I was brought up overseas, so I believe in the importance of culture and different views, something that WFA really embraces. We also run a side project called the Rural Youth Project, which was set up really to understand why young people leave rural areas and what we need to do to encourage them to stay. So it focuses on building their activism, enterprise and entrepreneurship and leadership skills. So I've got a team of 10 people, all women, so not much diversity in our business. But a lot of them are young women as well, so sort of forming their careers. I've got a real passion for supporting young women. I've been so lucky in having mentors myself through my career, and it's something that I really love to pass on. So I employ people and I also use subcontractors.
And I think from your background, it's kind of very clear to our viewers as to why I asked you to join this session today, because we are talking about setting goals. And it's something that as a mentor, you'll get that information from, but also if you're coaching and supporting young people, you might get that information. So I think I want to move straight on to the kind of goal setting part of this discussion. So all of you watching, over this 20 minutes, we want you to think about the professional or even the personal goals you'd like to set yourself. And then if you do kind of come up with some really interesting ones or ones that you feel are going to potentially help you in your life, then do share them in the chat box, because we'd love to be inspired by your aims for the year, and you're going to inspire others to maybe set similar goals or goals in similar areas. So I think the first area I really want to pin down with Jane is I want to discuss what it is, I suppose, what's important for people to consider when setting goals for themselves. Jane, have you got any thoughts on this? Do you want to kick us off with some opinions on that?
Yeah, I was talking to Ollie before this session, and I thought what a lovely thing this was to think about, because we all think about our goal setting at the beginning of the new year, or we think we ought to, and don't necessarily do anything about it. So it was a really good chance for me to reflect on goal setting. And I'm not a natural, I don't like conforming. So for me, setting goals is really hard because it doesn't fit with my nature. But actually it's a good thing to do because of that. And so thinking about it last night, the things that I think are really important, firstly, to be kind to yourself, not to beat yourself up for all the things you aren't and all the things you can't do and all the things that you think you should be doing, but aren't very achievable. So first thing, be kind to yourself, know yourself. So really think about what are your weaknesses What's your purpose? Why are you here? What are you here to do? How can you add value? What are your values? So what underpins who you are? Your loves, your dreams. So all of that should be part of your goal setting. I read something last night about looking at your patterns of success and achievements. So who's paid you to do what, or who's asked you to do what, because usually embedded in that is part of your purpose. So if you're struggling to find it yourself, and it is really hard to recognize, who you are and what you are. So look at what other people ask you to do. The bit that I find really challenging is being smart about your goals. So to hold yourself to account, which is something I really need to do. So you need to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and set yourself time-bound goals. And that accountability is really important, and it's sort of embedded in being honest with yourself about what's achievable. For me, I need inspiration. So Ollie will probably ask me about what my goals were at the beginning of this year. For me, listening to podcasts and Audible books have been really important, linked to trying to get a bit fitter, and actually keeping that up. So I need creative stimulus to achieve my goals. I need a bit of fun about it. So also be, true to your personality about what really makes you tick. And I know some of us, goals are about rewards as well. So what do you reward yourself at the end of the day? And for me, that's not about having a glass of wine. I need to make that reward something else. So I think it's knowing yourself really well. If you're going to achieve goals, setting them's just, that can be fresh air. But achieving those goals is about understanding yourself, I think, fundamentally, and making sure that those goals are achievable for you.
There's some really great tips in there. I hope everyone's got a pen and paper. I think from my side, I actually had written down as one of my key points as well, the kindness thing. I think it's so important because, I have people who've said to me before, like, okay, I want to be a director in 3 years of this company, and I want to do this and that. But actually, you've got to figure out how you're going to get there. And if you don't get there, don't be disappointed, because you've probably done some other amazing things along the way that have really helped you in your career. And maybe you've learned about something else that takes you down a slightly different career path or a slightly different personal path. So I think that one's absolutely important. And one I didn't think of was the reward side. That is actually really key, and something that we're going to get onto our own goals shortly, but that is something that I think we really should be doing. Say to yourself, okay, if I actually hit these goals, I'm going to do this for myself. Maybe I'm going to treat myself to a spa weekend. Maybe I'm going to give myself a break from my children. I don't know. Whatever you think is going to work for you, I think that's really valid. But I think when people are thinking about setting the goals, I think the time-bound one is the one when you're thinking about the SMART targets, so the specific, measurable, attainable, relevant. The time-bound one is the one that worries me the most, because I think that's where people may put the pressure on themselves and then may not be kind to themselves. So that's the one to maybe watch out for. And also as well, people need to be thinking, if I don't hit it, I do feel like, a lot can change as well. So if we are setting these goals, you've got to be saying to yourself, we're in times of COVID, our careers, our personal lives can go in many different directions at the drop of a hat. So that's something else to consider. It's back to the kindness point, really. If you don't hit your goals and you don't achieve them in your timeframes, don't beat yourself up, because there's so many other exciting things that could happen and go from there.
Yeah, and you made a really important point there, Ollie, which is about reflection. We probably all go through it, but I find, I get to the end of the day and something has happened which has really knocked me off course, or has given me a bit of a wobble, and it'll be something, I think I've got high emotional intelligence, so I may read something into a situation, and the beginning of the day freshness and feeling alive and vibrant, which I do every morning. By the time you get to 6 o'clock and you're tired and something has knocked you off balance, what I've learned during COVID, really, because I've had more time, I think, is to go to bed and reflect on it. So overnight is really good reflection time. You're going to be more positive, or I know I'm going to be more positive in the morning. And that reflection time is really important when it comes back to your goals, because if you don't, if you don't achieve your goals, what have you learned along the way? And that reflection could be much more powerful of something you've learned about yourself, or something you've learned about how you handle situations, or what you've learned along the way. So that's probably me not liking to be bound by goals and systems. That's probably my get out of saying, well, actually, but I reflected on that. I may not have run 4 times a week, but I've reflected well on this.
So you've mentioned the running twice now, Jane. Is that your goal for the year, or have you got other goals? Can you just tell us, really? Well, I know it's quite a personal question, but it would be really great to hear kind of what goals that you've set for yourself over this year.
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably go through yours as well, Ollie, but mine sort of centered around, and again, I did this last night, centered around knowing that we were still going to be locked up, and during COVID. So for the last 12 months, they've focused on health. They've focused on doing things at home. They've focused on myself, my brand, and what I'm doing personally, and also my business and my team. So as far as myself, health, I said I was going to run 3 to 4 times a week, to do yoga 3 to 4 times a week, and to walk at least 10,000 steps a day, and only to drink at the weekend. And pretty much I've been pretty good, actually. I'm not fast at running. Yoga I can't live without now. I mentioned before, so podcasts and Audible have been my friend, my dear friend during all of this, because it's kept me motivated. As far as home is concerned, veg garden, love planting things, growing things, having the time, being here, being present. I've tackled a big fear of mine. I've ridden horses since I was 16. It's also been a mental block for me, because it's really dented. I had a bad fall, it really dented my confidence. And I'm still wrangling with that now, but I know that there's so much that will unlock if I overcome that fear and build my confidence. I'm even getting a bit emotional talking about it. As far as myself, I'm in that phase of my career where I'm moving from building a business, and we've got a great, well-supported business, into what do I want to do afterwards? What can I start bringing into my life where I'm giving back? So I'm at that age and stage in my career where I have brilliant young people working with me, and they are taking more and more responsibility. So I've joined some boards, so SIUC, Lantra and Ringlink boards. I'm contributing more as a leader within the sector. I need to do more about my personal brand, but that's been a key objective to start building on this year. And then business-wise, being brutally honest, I've felt the need to increase our profitability. Sometimes we don't charge enough because we're nice, and I don't want to be greedy, but profit allows you to reinvest. So I've had a focus on increasing our profit and actually taking more notice of that. We formalized giving back a bit more to the industry. It's something we've always done, but we don't really talk about it. But it's important to our brand that we are seen to be giving back to the industry and doing it in a positive and valuable way. And one thing that's been really key, I suppose, the final point on business, is having confidence on our values as a business. So we believe in kindness. We believe in not being greedy. We believe, and I've never really felt confident that those are business acceptable. But I've got real confidence during COVID that they are really important, the values that are embedded in us as a team. And so we now talk about it much more openly. So those have been my key ones. Looking ahead, I really want us to come out of COVID consciously and to support our clients in doing the same. So that's about environment, that's about work-life balance, and that's about reducing our unnecessary travel and all of the things that go around with a too busy life.
I think there are some really great goals there. I think anyone who's watching, if you aren't inspired to put a goal down that's kind of based around one of those things that Jane has said, you're probably perfect. You don't need to set any goals, because there were so many things in there. I thought, yes, I need to be thinking about these things as well. So, from my side, I certainly also, ahead of this session, had a bit of a think about where I feel that maybe I could improve. And I'm a bit like, kind of at the start, you mentioned that maybe you're not a long-term career goal kind of person, Jane, and that's kind of how I feel as well. So for me, in my day-to-day work, it's about delivering projects to the best of my ability. But in my work life, I can be seen as a bit of a tough cookie. So, you know, I'm quite open now, but I can be quite direct, which I think can be a real strength. But I think for some, it can be a bit intimidating and come across in a less open way. So I want to try and kind of change a little bit based on the resilience training we had a few weeks ago. And I do want to be kinder this year. So I want to be a bit more patient and supportive of others that I work with, but also kinder to myself, because I think if we don't meet those high standards, if I don't meet my high standards, then we might have I might put too much pressure on myself. So my plan is, at the end of each week, I'm going to try and write down one kind supportive thing that I've done for someone I work with, and then one kind thing that I've done to myself. And hopefully that will kind of get me into the mindset of being kind in 2021, because, you know, although I think, you know, we're all living really busy, stressful lives, I think, you know, a kind comment, a supportive comment to either yourself or someone else, it takes 2 seconds, you know, so I need to try and make a bit more time for that in my day-to-day life. So that's my plan anyway, moving forward.
I think that's lovely, and that shows real humility, you know, and real, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, you know, what is it, who are you and what makes you tick, and being really honest about your weaknesses. And we all find that difficult to put into putting your weaknesses into a positive light, which you can do. It doesn't have to be negative, and you don't have to beat yourself up about it. You just need to recognize it and then start doing something that counteracts that weakness.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And to be honest, I'm quite lucky. My boss might be watching, but she always is quite honest with me about where I could improve. And so that was kind of something that she mentioned to me that I thought, okay, I should set some targets here. But for everyone else watching, I hope that's given you a bit of food for thought. And do share your goals in the chat box. We'll come to them really shortly. But while you're doing that, I do want to ask one question about International Women's Day, Jane. So the theme this year was choose to challenge. So I want to understand from you, Jane, what you think choose to challenge means for the food and ag industry, but also what can we as WFA members do to challenge things? So it'd be really good to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a big question. The kind of things that I've been thinking about on Choose to Challenge, I think it touches on my final point about our business aspirations, which are, you know, to come out of COVID consciously. And I think for food and agriculture, we've got a great opportunity to think about our road to net zero. I think women in that conversation can be very disarming. I'm not pro women, I'm pro talent, but I think women can be very disarming in having those conversations and calling things out. I think that not only in food and agriculture, in production terms, do we need to live that net zero route, but we also need to do it in our daily lives. So we can't just do that. We can't just abdicate the responsibility to those producing food. We all need to embed that net zero in our lives and in our businesses. You know, we're an SME, but we are just as important in delivering those goals. And it's not just about net zero, it's about biodiversity, it's about managing talent, it's about social, you know, our social worth. So that I think is something that we all need to take responsibility for. Then the other thing is, I think we've got a real opportunity and going forward to choose to challenge. I was talking to a very prominent man in the industry yesterday, and he was talking about the badge of honor that agriculture sometimes has for, you know, working long hours and for, you know, for managing to run businesses really leanly without much profit. And actually, you know, we should be choosing to challenge those things. You know, it isn't a badge of honor to be working 16-hour days, and it's not a badge of honor to be, you know, to be running our industry too leanly. You know, so I think all of us could dare to challenge those precedents that are set and are kind of part of the rhetoric of agriculture and food.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's so many, when I was thinking about this, I was the same as you, there's so many different like things to unpick from the phrase choose to challenge. It makes it a bit of a tricky one. But But I kind of agree. I think there are some big industry-wide challenges that we can look at and kind of address, like you say, kind of working towards environmental issues that we could certainly support. And then there's also just, you know, being brave and putting yourself out there in so many different ways. So whether it's about, you know, challenging injustices you are seeing when it comes to equality, or maybe it's just, you know, doing something brave that you know, there's that call you don't really want to do, you know, it's going to be a tough one, but, you know, taking a deep breath, leveling yourself and just doing what you need to do. So I think particularly for women in our industry, you know, on previous discussions that we've had, it's become clear that maybe we aren't as confident as, I don't want to stereotype, but we do kind of maybe have a bit of the imposter syndrome thing a little bit more than some men do. So I think if we can maybe, you know, put our confidence face on, be brave, put ourselves out there, I think that's going to be kind of the key for kind of trying to challenge ourselves, as well as challenging injustices that we're seeing and addressing challenges as well. So it's a really broad one, isn't it? It's quite a lot there to unpick.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I mean, we, you know, it is a women in food and agriculture event, but I think, you know, diversity and inclusion, I think our industry is getting much better. If you're talking about it, then we're dealing with it. You know, it may take time, but I've never felt unwelcome in this industry. Far from it. I've always felt supported. But I know not everybody feels that way. So we need to start leveling that up so that everybody does feel that they're a part of this industry and have something, whatever age. And I think sometimes age is the thing that is the biggest barrier. Just because somebody's young or just because somebody's old doesn't mean that they aren't valued and aren't valuable.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I've just had a look at the time and we're already at 20 past. So I'm going to skip through a couple of the chat comments that came through. So I think there's been some really nice comments that have come in. We've had someone who's commented on the Audible subscription, making their daily walks bearable, which is nice. Someone else has said one of the goals they have this year is to call a colleague once a week and ask how they're doing. That's a lovely one, isn't it, Jane? That's a really nice one.
Yeah, that is lovely. I mean, your point about kindness earlier, you don't know where that seed of kindness will plant, and just how when somebody comes back to you, makes me emotional thinking about people that have said it to me. You called just at the right time. I've had a really bad day, and it's really important to do that. And I don't do it enough. I don't make enough time to do it. But sometimes people ask in a very light touch way, but actually their need is deep.
And I think from a colleague perspective as well, we've all gone from seeing each other every single day and actually, you know, being able to wave at them across the office and have lunch with them to basically, you know, the odd meeting here and there. And some of my colleagues, I feel like I haven't seen them in so long because I'm just not in their departments, you know. So I think absolutely, I think that's a great one. And I think even if it's not your goal for the year, maybe we should all be a bit conscious to try and make sure that that's something that we're all thinking about as well over the next few months. So I'm going to round it up there. I think that's a really nice point to end on. So Jane, thank you so much for being so insightful and so open in this chat today, because, you know, it's a tricky conversation, this one, the goal setting discussion. You were so frank and honest with kind of what you want to address this year. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Thank you as well to everyone who's tuned in and contributed to the session today. So we hope you found it interesting. And we're going to be having another coffee break discussion session next month. So do tune in for that one if you enjoyed this one. We have our next live session, which is a fireside chat with Margot Slattery, who is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the global food giant Sodexo. That is next Thursday. So March the 18th at 4 p.m. CET. So we hope you can join that if you're available. But thank you for joining today. We hope you got something out of it, and I hope you have a good day moving forward.